And so if I could just paint a picture of why we believe in talking about relationships to teenagers, it's this. Right here, I'm just going to put my cards on the table. I'm not as interested in you killing it in the dating game right now. I'm in it for the long game. I want to be standing in between you and your spouse at an altar in a church 5, 10, 15 years from now. I want to be present when your first child is born. I want to write to you or comment on an Instagram post or whatever social media we're using 50 years from now, congratulating you on 4 decades of marriage. Friends, I'm in it for the long game. And my hope is that you would be too. Because building that type of relationship, building that type of love is difficult. Perhaps even unnatural, certainly countercultural. And if it were easy, over half of our marriages wouldn't be ending in divorce. Now, you may be thinking, well, yeah, Micah, but that's just the general population, not us. We're different. We're Christians. Friends, we're no different. The divorce rate for Christians is, at best, slightly less than the national average. And depending on who you read or what study you take, it could be more. And so the question then becomes, what's it going to take? What's it going to take? How do I become the type of person that's able to contribute to a life-giving, lifelong union with a spouse? And we're going to seek that answer together over the next few weeks, but tonight we're going to start with where we always should. And that's with our rabbi, our teacher, Jesus of Nazareth. Now, before you write me off or wonder how we're going to connect the dots, understand that it's imperative for us to grasp that the love, grace, kindness, and mercy that Jesus exudes, when that's distilled into us, when we're able to be formed into faithful, loving people, that is when authentic, true love shows up. When we're able to look to who Jesus was, emulate it, embody it, and live it out for ourselves, that is when true love enters the picture. In fact, the very act of marriage is just that. It's a picture. It's a shadow of another union between Christ, the groom, and the church, his bride. And so when navigating and journeying towards this covenant love, our priorities, they get realigned. Life ceases to exist around finding the one, or hooking up, or swiping right. Instead, our whole world is reoriented around Jesus. This becomes the new equation: Jesus over everything. That's it. Jesus over everything. See, what it's going to take is actually the wrong question. Instead, the question we should be asking is this: how does Jesus love? How did he do it? How did Jesus, our rabbi, our teacher, how did he love? And the answer is found for us right here in Romans chapter 5, verse 8, which says, "But God demonstrates his own love for us in this: while we were still sinners, Christ died for us." He died before I gave my heart to him. He died hopeful that I would give my life to him. He died while we were still sinners, while we were still living in darkness, while we were still living life hidden, ashamed, afraid, broken, confused. Christ died for us. He died for you. He died for me. Friends, this is the choice that Jesus made. How did Jesus love? He loved sacrificially. He loved sacrificially. And my friends, this is the invitation that Jesus extends to us. Before any questions about romantic love with another person enter into the picture, the invitation that's extended is this: will you come, take up your cross, and follow me? Will you join me in growing in suffering love? The suffering love that we experience in Christ is not separate from the suffering love that we experience in a flourishing marriage. Rather, it's an overflow. In fact, I'd argue that a biblically based marriage acts as an echo of the life of apprenticeship that you've already signed up for. If you've chosen to give your life to Jesus, to apprentice under Jesus, to follow him, then when you enter into a covenant union with another person, it is then extending that allegiance to them under Christ. Look at the language used here in Ephesians chapter 5 to husbands and wives. Starting in verse 25, it says this: "Husbands, love your wives, just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her, to make her holy, cleansing her by washing with water through the word, and to present her to himself as a radiant church, without stain or wrinkle or any other blemish, but holy and blameless. In the same way, husbands ought to love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. After all, no one has ever hated their own body, but they feed and care for their body, just as Christ does the church. For we are members of his body. For this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. This is a profound mystery, but I am talking about Christ and the church. However, each one of you also must love his wife as he loves himself, and the wife must respect her husband. Do you see it? Love your wives. Give yourself up as your own body. Feed, care, love, respect. What is this? This is sacrificial language. This is the radical picture of suffering love. And in our Western, radically individualized society, this is so foreign to us, isn't it? Like when you're going through a typical day, most of your thoughts center around who? Who do you think about the most on a day-to-day average? Me, yourself, right? From birth, we are born with this bend towards having our needs, our wants, and our desires met and fulfilled. And the truth is, we're told that this is something that we will, or at least should, grow out of. But do you want to know a secret? A societal secret that they want to keep from us as young people, it's this. So many of us rarely do. So many of us rarely, if ever, actually grow out of this selfish love. And our selfishness, our greed, our lustful desire, it's being preyed upon, it's being marketed to, and it's being strategized into a copious consumeristic culture that seeks to meet individual wants over communal needs every single time. And so we must ask the question, is there a better way? Which brings us back to the original question. What does Jesus have to say? How did he do it? How did Jesus love? The prophet Isaiah tells us in Isaiah 53, Kristen read it. He was beaten. He was tortured, but he didn't say a word. Like a lamb taken to be slaughtered and like a sheep being sheared, he took it all in silence. Justice miscarried and he was led off. And did anyone really know what was happening? He died without a thought for his own welfare, beaten bloody for the sins of my people. They buried him with the wicked, threw him in a grave with a rich man. Even though he'd never hurt a soul or said one word that wasn't true, still, it's what God had in mind all along, to crush him with pain. The plan was that he gave himself as an offering for sin so that he'd see life come from it. Life and more life. And God's plan will deeply prosper through him. Justice miscarried. Without a thought for his own welfare, even though he'd never hurt a soul, even though he'd never said one word that wasn't true, still, Jesus died for you and for me. And so how does Jesus love? He loves sacrificially, but how else does Jesus love? He loves selflessly. Without a second thought for himself, he loves selflessly.